Okay, right now as we've been reading Julius Caesar, we've moved on to Act 2, and one of the things that I definitely need to teach about is the motif of flattery in the play Julius Caesar in Acts 1 and 2. Now I want to kind of go over something that a motif is a recurring subject, theme, or idea in literature or a single literary work. This is not to be confused with an archetype, which is a huge recurring pattern in literature, history, and culture. An example of an archetype would be an epic hero or a tragic hero or a flood story. But rather, we're talking about a motif which is much smaller in size and scope. And for us, the motif, the recurring subject in this play is going to be flattery. And then there's also a recurring motif in a lot of Shakespearean plays that's in Julius Caesar, but also in other ones like Macbeth and Hamlet, as well as King Lear. But the motif of seeming versus being. So we're going to kind of go over the flattery in Acts 1 and 2 of Julius Caesar, as well as some of the things, the ideas of seeming versus being. First recap of something that we've already read in my English 10 classes is Act 1, Scene 2. It's obvious that Cassius flatters Brutus. In one of the scenes, one of the things that he says is, "I, your glass, shall reflect to you what you need to know about yourself." So he pretends that he is his mirror. Obviously, in their conversation, the idea of being honorable and noble is recurring when Brutus says something to the effect of, "If it be aught for the general good, then set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I shall look upon both indifferently. For so shall the gods speed me, that I love the name of honor more than I fear death." Obviously, he wants to be known as noble, and I know that Cassius refers to him as this. Also in Act 1, Scene 2, Cassius flatters Brutus by alluding to one of his relatives, even though that's speculative, that Junius Brutus was a character in history who got rid of Tarquinius, who had named himself king of Rome. But Junius Brutus is famous for restoring the Republic. Well, that would once again be a way of flattering Brutus and helping him remember his own family name and how Rome now needs Marcus Brutus to be just like Junius Brutus and restore the Republic. That's when he says there was a Brutus once who brooked the eternal devil, etc. We also see at the end of Act 1, Scene 2, Cassius's soliloquy is where he reveals how he's also going to flatter Brutus. He says he's going to write the letters in several hands as if they came from several citizens, basically talking about how great Brutus is and kind of how Caesar's ambition shall be glanced at. What we later learn then is in Act 1, Scene 3, Cinna's the one that delivers them to all those different areas. So Act 1, Scene 2, that's kind of where flattery begins for Brutus. But now, Brutus is not the only character that is flattered in the play. In the play, Julius Caesar is going to be flattered and manipulated by Decius Brutus. And in Act 1, Scene 2, which I'm actually going to skip to, Decius Brutus basically says that he can manipulate Caesar. So now that I go to the actual play and context of it, Cassius says, "But it is doubtful yet whether Caesar will come forth today or no. For he is superstitious grown of late, quite from the main opinion he held once of fantasy of dreams and ceremonies. It may be that these apparent prodigies, the unaccustomed terror of this night, and the persuasion of his augurers may hold him from the capital today." To which Decius Brutus replies, "Never fear that. If he be so resolved, I can oversway him. For he loves to hear that unicorns may be betrayed with trees, and bears with glasses, and elephants with holes, lions with toils, and men with flatterers. But then I tell him he hates flatterers. He says he does, being then most flattered. Let me work, for I can give his humor the true bent, and I will bring him to the capital." Now these lines are really important because they're about how Decius Brutus can flatter people. And it refers to the motif of flattery that we're going to be working on as one of our constructive responses in the play. But look what he says. Unicorns can be betrayed with trees. So now the imagery here is what makes it powerful, because unicorns obviously are mythological creatures. Well, how could they be betrayed with trees? Well, what if they got their horn stuck in a tree? Well, they would pull out the horn and obviously die. We move on to the next thing. How could bears be betrayed with glasses? Well, in this case, glasses refers to mirrors. So you're thinking, bears with mirrors, where would Shakespeare have even gotten this idea from? But what's really funny about Shakespeare is outside of the Globe Theater, there were other performances and things of public entertainment going on. And one of the things that they would do in Elizabethan times would be to go out into the wild, grab a bear, like capture it, then bring it back to London, and then chain it up to a pole, and then they would basically harass it through various means, throwing stuff at it, taunting at it, etc. And one of the things that they would do to make the bear really mad would be to put a mirror in front of it and watch it freak out. Because bears, when they see other bears, freak out and are territorial, and so they fight against each other. So that's how bears can be betrayed by mirrors. Elephants with holes. Well, obviously, if an elephant, being as big as it is, falls into a hole, it's going to be quite a difficult task to get the elephant out of it just because it's so big. Lions with toils. What a great illusion there. Because lions, even though we think of them as the hunters on the veldt in South Africa chasing down things, let's be real. The male lions didn't do anything. All the male lions do is sit around and sleep and wait for the female lions to go out and hunt and catch those things. So, in other words, lions don't really want to work that hard, and that's why toils, or something that will require hard work, betrays a lion. And then last but not least, men with flatterers. So this comes back to that recurring theme of flattery that we saw in Act 1, where Brutus and Cassius is flattering Brutus, and now Decius Brutus is talking about how different things can be dangerous to one another, and in particular, danger comes from men who are flatterers. And then I like the next line, because he goes, and then I tell Caesar that he hates flatterers, and then he's even more flattered than he would have been. Because if you openly try to flatter Caesar, he's not going to listen to you. But if you tell him that he hates flatterers, then you flatter him. So that's what makes this kind of an interesting quote and worthy of analysis. Now we move on to later on in Act 2. Decius Brutus has shown up at Caesar's house, and Caesar basically decided, I'm not going to the capital today. So Decius asks him, Most mighty Caesar, let me know some cause, lest I be laughed at when I tell them so, as far as why aren't you coming to the capital? Caesar replies, the cause is in my will. I will not come. That is enough to satisfy the Senate. Now this is where he makes his mistake. But for your private satisfaction, because I love you, I will let you know. Calpurnia here, my wife, stays me at home. She dreamt tonight, she saw my statue, which like a fountain with 100 spouts did run pure blood. And many lusty Romans came smiling and did bathe their hands in it. And these does she apply for warnings or portents and evils imminent. And on her knee hath begged that I will stay at home today. Brutus then turns it on us. Oh, this dream is all misinterpreted. It was a vision fair and fortunate. Your statue spouting blood in many pipes in which so many smiling Romans bathe signifies that you, great Rome, shall suck reviving blood, and that great men shall press for the tinctures, stains, and relics, and cognizance. This, by Calpurnia's dream, is signified. So what has he done? He flatters Caesar by reinterpreting Calpurnia's dream, in which basically Caesar's being stabbed to death and murdered. Caesar is now flattered because look what he says. And this way have you well expounded it. Decius Brutus then goes to the next stage and he says, I have when you heard what I can say, and know it is now. The Senate have concluded to give this day a crown to mighty Caesar. Well, there's another step in the direction of flattery, right? If you shall send them word you will not come, their minds may change. Now, besides, it were a mock apt to be rendered for someone to say, break up the Senate till another time, when Caesar's wife shall meet with better dreams. What a great method of persuasion. In other words, we're going to break up the Senate because your wife had a bad dream? If Caesar hide himself, shall they not whisper, lo, Caesar is afraid? Pardon me, Caesar, for my dear, dear love to our proceeding bids me tell you this, and reason to my love is liable. In other words, you're going to listen to your wife. We're going to have to break up the Senate because your wife had a bad dream? If we were on ESPN right now, we would say, come on, man. At which point, too, look what he says. And reason to my love is liable. In other words, you can trust me, Caesar. And now, look at Caesar. How foolish do your fears seem now, Calpurnia. I am ashamed I did yield to them. Give me my robe, for I will go. And that is how Caesar is flattered into going to the Capitol, by Decius Brutus. And so it makes its recurring theme. To add, too, flattery is going to be alluded to in Act 3, as well as with what Mark Antony says and does. And then Act 4 is going to be, there's going to be an argument between Cassius and Brutus in which flattery finally makes its way forward too. But that will be the subject of its own video tutorial as we move forward and read those. Right now our focus is on Act 2 and the flattery therein.